Oh, it appears that I am live. Or so it appears. Hello, everybody. I hope you are all well. Christopher here, coming to you live from the Isle of Anglesey, floating about in the Irish Sea just off the coast of North Wales. Now, I can't see you, which is frightfully peculiar for somebody who lives for the applause, but I kind of know that you are all there, all over the world, watching. So I apologize if I appear somewhat disheveled, but I have been ensconced at the mortuary all day since about 7:15 this morning, and I've only just come home by the skin of my teeth to come and speak to you here. So I'm very excited, and for those of you who have joined in, thank you so much. So to give you a little bit of background, because some of those words that I've just said might have come as a frightful shock to those who don't know me. But then again, the title of the presentation might have given you a little teeny incy bit of a clue. So I work professionally in a mortuary and bereavement center. So in the United States, you would know that as a morgue, a coroner's facility where we examine the bodies of the recently deceased to try and ascertain a cause of death. And we also look after all of the deceased that come into our care, and also their families, the bereaved, and other people who have business within the mortuary coroner's environment. So that's kind of my background. And this is now my 30th year. I know, not many wrinkles, but you know, a lot of preparation H on this face. But that's kind of been my life. But I'm also a druid, and you would think that the two might possibly be antagonistic, but they're not. I think that they inform one another rather beautifully. So I've also written extensively about death, dying and bereavement and mortality salience in my book, which was previously called The Journey into Spirit, and Llewellyn are re-releasing it this autumn, and it will be retitled as The Last Leaf Falls. So the way that we deal with death in general, now we have an anthropological term that we bunch in all of the things that are associated with death, dying and bereavement into one anthropological term, which is mortuary rituals and practices. So even the secular component of the work that I do still comes under that anthropological title of mortuary ritual and practice, being the practice side of it. Now, the manner in which people deal with the dead will tell you an awful lot about that particular society that one might be looking at either on the computer or on TV or in articles through any form of microscope. You can tell an awful lot about a society just by the manner that they deal with the dead. You see, mortuary ritual and practice is completely interwoven into our societies and speaks huge volumes about us as a people. And it's peculiar in that what do we share on your side of the Atlantic if you're in the United States, or in the Southern Hemisphere in Oceania, Australia, or here in Northern Europe? So much of our current mortuary rituals and practices have come about because of the pioneering efforts of one individual, and that was Queen Victoria, the mourning queen, who spent 40 years in mourning. 40 years! And it dictated so much of our mortuary rituals and practices within, and that's only in the last couple of 100 years. But it's peculiar because there's so much complexity in mortuary rituals and practices, from the way that hearses are black and the way that funeral directors dress. A lot of that comes from Victorian Britain and Victorian United States and its influences. But there's so much about mortuary ritual and practices that tell us so much about different peoples from different times. Now, the problem with that is, if you look at somewhere like Egypt, all of the mortuary temples that line the west side of the Nile banks can tell us so much about a peoples who are invested in mortuary rituals. They cared for their dead. They had these enormous temples. But what they don't do is they don't necessarily always tell us the liturgical functionality of those particular buildings. And there's a perplexity in that. So if you imagine, just hypothetically, that something catastrophic happens to our planet, most of our civilization is wiped out, and tens of thousands of years go by and everything is covered by tons and tons of soil, and somebody is planting potatoes in a field, and they accidentally fall through a hole and they land in a Christian church. So they don't know what a Christian church is. They've never seen one for tens of thousands of years. And they find themselves within it. Now, I wonder what they would assume about the possible liturgical functions of that particular building. Well, they'd see that there was a man and he's nailed to a cross. So they might assume that there's some form of sacrifice or some form of death cult involved. And also the orientation of the church, usually, especially in the United Kingdom, they're orientated east to west. And they might assume that they worshipped the sun or they revered the sun by the way that the building is aligned. Now, we know that those assumptions would be completely incorrect with our knowledge of current Christianity. So all of these things like Stonehenge and West Kennet Longbarrow and Bryn Celli here on the island of Anglesey, whilst they're mementos to some form of ancestral veneration or mortuary rituals and practices, we don't necessarily understand and know the nuts and bolts that governed the people who built these places. But what we do know is that they spent an enormous amount of time, they invested so much time in building monuments to the dead. And we still do today in cemeteries and in the way that we liturgicize and ritualize mortuary rituals and practices. But in today's society, now I don't know if anybody who have ever read the works of Ernest Becker. Now, if you've never heard of him, do look him up. He wrote a fascinating book, and I think it was in the 1970s, called The Denial of Death. And it's a fascinating anthropological and psychological examination of the way that death is dealt with and treated, and the relationship that we have with death is examined at some length within that book, and it's fascinating, and I'd recommend anybody to read it. You see, the problem with the denial of death, as Ernest Becker would refer to in his book, is that scientific capabilities have essentially turned dying in the 20th and 21st centuries into medical experiences, while simultaneously science and medicine have accepted the sanctity and sacredness of birth, and yet to a large extent, especially in the secular world, and I see this every day, I would say that 95% of the people that I deal with have a very detached relationship to death and also to mortuary rituals and practices. It's not something that they talk about. And those who are free in their expressions and the way that they articulate relationships and connection to death, they're a very small percentage, although I'm pleased to say that that percentage is growing with the rise of death cafes, death salons, people starting to talk and have dialogues and conversations about death and dying. But see, in antiquity, the dying and also the dead, they were always cared for by religious orders or spiritual orders, if you like. It was the realm of those who walked between the worlds. And of course, medicine, as we know about medicine today, is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. But the medicalization of death, and especially of grief, profoundly impacts all of us in the Western world, especially now in the 21st century. And the problem is that existential issues, you see, death will always address the big questions, and the big questions bring in issues of existentialism and of the spirit, but that is not the domain of medicine. We have created, if you like, invariably, and also by giving the process of death and dying over to medicine, we've created institutions where the indignities of death can occur without offending the sensibilities of the living. And I see that every day very viscerally. I see it quite viscerally. And it's a peculiar thing to perceive. And all of this is tied into what anthropology would refer to as mortality salience paradigm. And essentially, the mortality salience paradigm is an existential crisis and also a basic anxiety that runs through all of humanity. And the basic anxiety arises from the knowledge and the fact that we are all going to die. And that sounds really depressing, doesn't it? I might need a mouthful of gin just to offset that. But please don't judge me. I have been in the morgue since 7:15 this morning. We've seen that I exist now, but I'm able to think abstractly. And I know that one day I will die. We're born, we live, and we die. We don't come with a handbook. We have to find a handbook and then write our own words within that handbook. And this peculiar, magical, wondrous state that we all find ourselves in, life, life, a terminal sexually transmitted infection that none of us really know exactly how to deal with, but it's bloody good fun discovering how to deal with life. And of course, death comes into that. It ties into that. So we don't have a handbook. So all of the anxieties that we may feel surrounding death, now they're buffered. And the thing that buffers the mortality salience paradigm is our worldview and the manner by which we connect and develop relationships with other people, whether they're through beliefs, through spirituality, through religions, through sharing worldviews and developing and creating dialogues and conversations and ideologies and theologies about potentially what happens to us when we die. Those are those huge, big questions that medicine will usually invariably scratch its head at. Now, that's not to say that there are not people within medicine who aren't trained, well-versed and knowledgeable within the fields of existentialism. And of course they are. They might work in hospices. They might be hospices. I'm not entirely sure that's a word. Forgive me, I'm Welsh. But doctors, physicians who work in palliative care, so much has moved wondrously in the last couple of decades, but yet there's still so much work to do. Now, the mortality salience paradigm is a peculiar paradox in that there is no answer. There's no fundamental, correct, universal truth that will alleviate everybody's mortality salience paradigm. In order to alleviate MSP, as we call it in anthropology, we need three fundamental needs to be met. And those needs are meaning, significance, and transcendence. Finding meaning in life is what makes life incredibly magical and wondrous. When meaning diminishes in life, well, it's enough usually when there's no meaning in life for people to be found underneath their desks or tables, sucking on Valium the size of their heads just to get through the day. And that's not to say that there are, and we've probably all encountered people who have lost meaning in their lives. I see that daily, and it pains me daily. We deal with people who have committed suicide. The ultimate, perhaps, motion and action in response to the decline of meaning. And when meaning is diminished, we may suffer other bio and chemical reactions within our nervous systems. And one of those is depression. Now, that's not to say that depression doesn't have other chemical underpinnings, because it certainly does. But also, when meaning is lost, that can be a huge cause for the initiation of depression. So finding meaning within our lives is the secret to alleviating mortality salience paradigm and also death anxiety. And also to move into relationship with the fact that we are finite and with the fact that we will die. But what will our lives tell the world about our living, about us having been here? But of course, we're also caught up in what other people want us to do, obligations and responsibilities. And also we may find that we toe the line or we conform to what other people's meaning is in their own lives, rather than finding our meaning. And that can be a really frightfully difficult task, because we're told to strive through school, to get through school, and then you'll get there. And that'll be university or college, and strive through that and you'll get that lovely job, and then you'll get that lovely house, and then you'll get that lovely car, and strive and work and work and work, and you'll get there and you'll get there, and then you die. And you're like, oh shit, and now I'm dead. Now what do I do? And we all buy into that particular kind of illusion that there is something coming, that there's something that will imbibe and give meaning. But those things don't necessarily provide meaning that is significant and enables us to transcend. Instead, it just provide tiny little nuggets of satisfaction. So often when people shine too brightly, people might want them to dim their lights. And I say to you, never, never dim your light. Ever. Don't ever dim your light for anybody. Shine, because that's the purpose that you are here. That's the reason that your eyes are windows through which the universe experiences itself. How can you not shine? And if anybody tells you or asks you, dim your light, don't shine so brightly, you tell them to go and get a pair of shades and put those on. But you aren't dimming your light for anybody, because that's our job, is to shine. And even though we die, and even though death comes to us all, I think the magic in life is primarily because we end, because this life is so finite. That's what makes it so incredibly, impossibly magical. Now, within the pagan traditions, and especially within my tradition of Druidry, we're not a death-affirming tradition. We're not necessarily concerned with what comes in the hereafter. We're more concerned about the actions and the work that we do in the here and now, rather than working towards some form of reward or even the threat of perhaps punishment in the hereafter. Our lives within paganism and within the animistic spiritualities are about being here in this moment, which is so incredibly beautiful. And worrying about the hereafter is a little bit like going on a cruise to the Caribbean and then spending your entire time in your cabin worrying about home. You're going home anyway. Get yourself a gin, get out on the deck and enjoy being there. And I find that within the Celtic tradition, within Druidry, we have a prophet, and the prophet's name is Taliesin, an ungendered prophet, the chief bard of the people of Wales, the people of Britain. And in one of the works of Taliesin, there is this quote, and I shall say it to you in Welsh first, and then I'll translate it into English. A wyddost be wyt ti pam rwyt ti yn cysgu, a rwyt ti yn gorff neu ysbryd neu ganwit argal. Isn't that beautiful? And that says this, translates as this: know what you are when you are sleeping. Are you a body or a spirit or an occult radiance? And Taliesin speaks of almost the little death, the mini death that happens to us every day when we go to sleep. That point where we return, if you like, to the oneness, the wholeness of the universe in a place that time doesn't exist anymore. Time just slips by. And we are there in sleeping. And he considers, or it considers, that the mysteries to all of life is in sleep. One can access it in sleep. And it kind of, to me, has always alleviated the fear of death, the fear of being dead, which is a peculiar fear when you think about it. Because if I ask you now to cast your mind back to Tuesday, the 26th of May, 1842, I would imagine none of you can visualize Tuesday of 1842 because you weren't born. So often we may fear a future in which we're absent, but very rarely do we fear a past in which we were also equally absent. Fear is a peculiar thing, and fear is instilled in us for various reasons, by various mechanisms. So I ask that you never fear death, because it comes to us all. It's what we all have in common. But what is left behind is grief. And grief is peculiar. For essentially the function of grief is emotional relocation. The tool of sadness is to accommodate feelings of loss. And of course, the price of love is the pain of loss. And emotional relocation is peculiar, especially today within the current crisis of COVID-19 and the pandemic. And I see this every day in my professional capacity as well, that something is missing, something is broken, something has been removed from our everyday lives that we had grown so accustomed to, yet not necessarily always able to articulate. And we find that in today's COVID-19 conditions, that people are in sufferance of something that we have not seen before, especially those of us who weren't here during the Second World War, or who saw something equally as peculiar and as disruptive. And the thing that's missing is ritual. You see, all of the mortuary rituals and practices that we have in place today enable us to emotionally relocate, to say farewell, to say goodbye to those that we love. And those have now been fractured. And they've been fractured because of the pandemic. And we now have to find new rituals to enable people to, because basically at the moment in the United Kingdom, if somebody dies, they die essentially alone. If they've got COVID-19, they're dead alone. Nobody can see the body. And when the funeral happens, only 10 people can attend the funeral currently in Wales with the current government rules. Now, that is causing untold damage to people's internal constitution. And it's because the ritual itself is fractured. And if you think of the power of ritual, and I'm assuming that I'm speaking primarily to people who have some magical experience or who have an interest in paganism or druidry or other magical traditions, and that ritual is an essential part of that particular practice. But we also forget, perhaps, especially in the secular world, that ritual is also interwoven into secularity, especially into death and dying rituals that give a sense of meaning to the power of loss, to the function of loss. So ritual in itself is the interfacing of the internal world with the external world. Now, ritual doesn't necessarily have an immediate and apparent effect on the outside external world. That's not the function of ritual. The true function of ritual is to transform the internal constitution of said society, which of course does have impact further along, further down the road, on the external world. And there's so much power in that, and that your own internal constitution can be affected by ritual. So during COVID-19, we have to find new rituals to enable people to emotionally relocate, to find a manner and a method of emotionally relocating. Because you see, death appears to be the very thing that destroys meaning in our lives. But yet I believe that it's also the very source of our creativity. We do live on forever. We live on forever through our creativity, regardless of what we all might think or do not think happens to us after we die. We are all in this together, and we're immortalized through our creativity. Now, in the grand scheme of the universal clock, the great universal clock, you have a picosecond in time to make a difference, to really make a difference in this world, to shine and be the brightest aspect of yourself than you can possibly be. And the universe gave you that body that you are now sitting in, watching me babble on a computer. The universe gave you that body. Love that body. Love it and decorate it and be as fabulous as you can, because one day it will end. And with that ending, what will that ending say about your living? So open channels of dialogue, open rivers of communication between your order members, your grove members, your coven members, your tradition communities, your friends and your families. Open those channels to discuss what you think happens to you when you die. What do your traditions teach you happen to you when you die? And how will that impact the people who are left behind? And what tools do your traditions have, and also your theologies and your philosophies have, to enable people to deal with being bereaved? This life is the ride of your life. So evaluate the things that bring meaning into your life, that make you feel significant and cause you to transcend your basic anxieties. Play with all of the colors of the crayon box. Play with them all, because too soon, too quickly, it's all over. But it's this living, it's this being in this moment that truly matters. So I ask you, shine like you've never shone before. And in these very peculiar times, be inspirational, impact on your square mile, because that's really all we can do in these peculiar times. Let's try and see what we can do to improve our square mile. And in my case, that means working with the dead and the bereaved. What is it in your case? That's probably enough rambling for me. I'll get told off in a minute from Llewellyn for treading on somebody else's toes. I have a gin. And I hope that you are well. And I hope that you've enjoyed my little babble. And with that, I'm Christopher Hughes. I don't know what happens now. Oh, Marie. That's so kind. Oh, I can see people. I can see. Oh, thank you. Oh my God. Say you have a YouTube channel. Oh, do you know what? I'm such a technophobe. I'm not sure. Oh, that's Patty. Hi, Patty. Hi, Jimmy. Oh, look. Oh, gosh, there's so many people. Look at that. I'm overwhelmed. I can't keep up with all of that. Thank you all so much. That's really, really lovely. I know, because it's like I talk about death and I work with death, but you know, at the same time, I do kind of like classify myself as terminally delightful. I tend to see the delight in everything, you know, and even death and dying. There's still so much that we can do. You know, I've always believed, and even in my Druidry, we always teach that we can't cure the world of its sorrows at all. We just can't. But we can choose to be joyous. And I can see that so many of you also choose to be joyous. And I'm so glad. It's William Kimber, Marlene. How do I contact you regarding bereavement? You can find me on Facebook. You can find me anyway. Just Google the Anglesey Druid Order that I head, and you can get in touch with me through the Anglesey Druid Order. Just go to our contact page and you can send a message from there. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. That sounds so exotic. That's somewhere in the Caribbean Sea, isn't it? Oh, like there was a person there who just said that they're being called to being a death doula. I encourage you all to do that, to become a death doula, to become an amicus mortis. Now, isn't that a gorgeous term? A friend in death. Isn't that lovely? To be there to help people walk to the very edge of forever, to guide. Because, you know, I hope that there'll be people there for me to tell me my stories that I love, sing me the songs that I love when I die. Oh, thank you, Kathy, Willem, Diane, Chacha. Oh, Bonnie Keaton. Hi, Bonnie. You're such an amazing energy. Oh, thank you. Nova Scotia. Oh, Jennifer. Nova Scotia sounds lovely. I've always, and Arizona. Wow. What is the best book to read if we want to learn more from Taliesin? Well, you can read my book, From the Cauldron Born. And I've also just written a book about Ceridwen, which also brings Taliesin into it. And it'll be in the Llewellyn Winter Catalogue. But if you want to know more about Taliesin, also look up Dr. Gwilym Morris Baird. Baird. He's got the most amazing free online courses about Taliesin. Have a look at him as well. And if you can't remember him, just send me a message. AngleseyDruidOrder.co.uk. Las Vegas. Oh, I've been to Las Vegas. Oh, I got frightfully drunk in Las Vegas. I think I was very even my husband had to stop and oh, thanks, Dire Witch. Oh, that's really kind. Thank you so. Do you know what? I do a fraction of this talk and it takes like 90 minutes. How on earth did I just do that in 20 minutes? It was probably the worst bit of verbal diarrhea. Thank you so much. Oh, Florida. I'm supposed to be in Florida on the 19th of September, but it doesn't look as if it's going to happen now. Pandemic. Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind. I really appreciate everybody commenting. Thank you. Mickey. Oh, hi, Mickey. I hope you're all well. Oh, gosh, look, I've only painted half my nails. Okay, I really appreciate that. And I know that people are busy and they've got stuff in their lives, but thank you so much for taking time out to come and say hello. Thank you. Oh, Kat, I'm so glad. Kat says this talk has helped me so much. Thank you. I'm Welsh and a Native American. Oh my gosh. You've got a lot going on there. That's marvelous. How did you do that? Wow. That's amazing. Stay out of Florida. No one knows what social distancing is. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry, Asia. Oh, Mickey Muller. Your nails are similar. I know, but I only did one hand. I've had a frightfully busy day. And I do like a painted nail. Thank you. It means a lot because it's quite peculiar. I've not really done one of these live conferences before, so I really didn't know what to expect. And I'm glad that you were there. And thank you all so much. It makes a huge difference knowing that there are people out there who are fabulous by the sounds of it. So just carry on being fabulous. And remember, I'm telling you now, go and be fabulous. It was painting those while watching. Oh, April, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. Yes, Bonnie, do help other people with the dying process. There's just so much that we can do. There's so much. And if you've never attended a death cafe, or even you can run one, I encourage you to do so because they're marvelous things where people can chat and have that open dialogue and just be generally open, you know? And we do the same. We have an exercise here for Calan Gaeaf, for Samhain, where we ask our entire community to witness that if I am to die before now and next Samhain, I want the community to witness these, my desires and my wishes. There's very simple things that we can do that make such an enormous difference to the world. So, and it seems that you are a bright light with love from Boston. I've been to Boston as well. I've never been to Oklahoma. Oh, I was supposed to be, where was I supposed to be? I was supposed to be in New Orleans this August and up with the Temple of Witchcraft in New Hampshire doing presentations, but it's all been cancelled because of COVID-19. But I have to stay here. and help the dead and help the bereaved. So, there's things that we have to do and carry on doing. And have a gin, Summer. Can't wait to see your future talks. Thank you so much. That's really, really, really lovely of you all. I do come to the United States fairly frequently. I've been to Pantheon a bunch of times and other things throughout the US. And the Paganicon in Minneapolis, that was marvelous. We had such a lovely time. I went with my fabulous friends, Dave the Bard and his wife, Kerry Lee. We had the most gorgeous time. And Llewellyn were there. And it was lovely, lovely. Yes. So my new Llewellyn book, As the Last Leaf Falls, it's not new actually. It's just been retitled and recovered. So I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you, Rachel from Montana. That's really lovely. I can't read them all. They're all going too fast. Come to Cleveland, Ohio. I was in Ohio last year for Pagan Spirit Gathering with Selena Fox, and it was marvelous. It was really good. Met you in the mud last year at PSG. That's really lovely. Kathleen Campbell from Georgia. You've helped me address family on this issues. I'm so sorry I only had half an hour. I only had 30 minutes. There's so much more I wanted to touch on and discuss, but I hope that it's given you just a little taste of my life in death and also of the power that we do have, even when we feel so utterly disempowered. Thank you so much. Yes, it is Lark. It's the same as the Journey into Spirit. They've just retitled it and recovered it. But I do have another idea for something that expands on that, especially after the whole COVID-19 thing. So things have changed dramatically in, my relationship with death as well. And after 30 years, I didn't think that was even possible, but it has. Cheryl from Llewellyn. Cheryl. Cheryl is the friendly face that everybody sees when they walk into the Llewellyn offices in Minnesota. Hi, Cheryl. Haven't seen you in ages. I hope you're well. Thank you so much for... there's another Christopher. Hi, Christopher. Hi. Thank you. You've been all so kind. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely delightful. I'm just waiting for somebody to throw me off, but they don't seem to be throwing me off. So if they don't throw me off, I'll just continue to blab. So I know that to most of you, it's 10 to 7 in the evening here on the island of Anglesey, the last stronghold of the British Druids. And I live here with my partner and our little cat, Lily. She's not been well of late. She had cystitis, dreadful calamity. But she's a little bit better now after some antibiotics. Perhaps one more question and then we should wrap up. That's Llewellyn. That was Llewellyn. The big boss. Waves from Vermont. Cheryl rocks. I've just had really nice comments, Llewellyn. Not necessarily a lot of questions, but then I might have missed them because they went by, didn't they? Wow, those questions went up with haste. It was. Thanks, Shawnee Water Dragon. Is that correct? Thank you. Thank you. Salem, Massachusetts. Maria, I've been to Salem a bunch of times. I love Salem, Massachusetts. It's lovely. Send out a recommended reading list. I can do that. Gosh, you know what? I've got them all beside me here. There's definitely check out Ernest Becker, but there's another book that I really, really want everybody to check out, and it's called The Other Side of Sadness. Have a look at that. Google that. Find it on Amazon or the usual places where books are sold. And any other online webinars? Yes, apparently I do have something with the Shamanic Summit. I'm not entirely sure when it goes out. It's being recorded tomorrow. But I shall put some links up on my Facebook page. I haven't been on Facebook an awful lot during the pandemic. I found that I've been quite exhausted most days after coming home from work. And sometimes the whole background noise from Facebook can sometimes be quite distracting and also disarming. So I've been avoiding social media, and I apologize to all the people who might enjoy my funny little posts. I do apologize for that, but I find that currently at the moment I'm just fully ensconced in what's happening in the pandemic, and hopefully that will ease off as time goes by. But yes, The Other Side of Sadness. Yes, it's a really, really, really amazing book to read. It goes a little fast to get a question in, but giving me a lot to think about. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. Take care of you. Thanks, Cynthia. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Start vlogging more instead. Oh, Kat, I'd love to, but I'm such a klutz when it comes to computers. I need like a little person who can come along and, I'm all right with a stage. If somebody gives me a stage and says, there you go, do it now, I'm okay. But when it comes to the pushing of buttons, I'm frightful. I'm ghastly. My Facebook page is Christopher Hughes. Can you see it on the screen the way my name is spelt? I don't know if everybody else can see that, but it's KRISTOFFER. And you can find me on Facebook. And you can also find the Anglesey Druid Order on Facebook as well. And my Celtic Tarot, which I did through Llewellyn. Oh, that was fun. And I might be working on another one. Don't tell anybody. It's a secret. Thank you, Christopher. We go to... Oh, that's Llewellyn again. Thank you so much. Oh, Frank, this has helped me understand a bit more about my death phobia. Yeah, don't be afraid. Just be fabulous. Okay? Yeah, and have a read of my little book as well. I know I have to plug a book because this is a publishing platform, I suppose, but hopefully my book might help as well. So do have a look. Thank you. Thank you, Shawnee Water Dragon. I love that name. You're all amazing. Thank you. So go and be